This is the Perdigon nymph. The word Perdigon in Spanish means pellet, which refers to how quickly this sinks, just like a piece of lead shot. Because it sinks so quickly, it's a really good fast water mayfly nymph, tied in sizes from size 12 with 5mm tungsten bead right down to 18 with a 2mm bead. I generally use a jig hook and start by putting the bead on and sliding a piece of lead wire up inside the bead to lock it in place. You can use grub hooks, but the jig hook does ride nicely, and because it's so heavy, the fact that the jig hook goes upside down is really good at avoiding snags.
I use cock hackle for the tail.
The original calls for Coq de Leon, but use what you have. It's easy enough to lock it in place. Make a smooth body with the thread. Because we're using thick thread, it's very simple. When I'm tying flies quickly, I always try and reduce the number of cuts I need, just to save picking up the scissors so much. Lock the tail in place with a wrap underneath. This lifts it and spreads the feathers nicely. Just make a reasonably smooth body, a couple of half hitches, and then you're ready to add the hot spot. I'm using fire orange thread for the hot spot, which shows up really well through the UV epoxy coating. Whip finish the hot spot. One thing about these flies with epoxy coatings is that the epoxy holds everything in place really well. This is the reason I use epoxy coating over holographic tinsel quite frequently. I'll show you a photo of one at the end of this video. Cut off the thread. You want to make sure there's no little bit sticking out because it does catch on the epoxy and makes a big bulge in the fly. So for this reason, I sometimes just flame them off. Add your epoxy. I put a little bit too much on this one, but it doesn't really matter, and we are talking about tying flies very quickly. Make sure you don't get epoxy caught up in the eye or in the tail. It'll stick the tail feathers together again, so not something I worry about too much. Just rotate the fly, spread the epoxy, put your UV light on. I can see I missed a little spot near the tail of this one, so I'll just add a little bit more. Easy enough to do. Once I've set them with the UV light, I put them out in the sun on the windowsill for a few minutes. UV from the sun will set them very hard, otherwise they tend to be a little bit tacky. You can use this style of tying to make different kinds of nymphs. It makes a very robust holographic tinsel nymph, a very fast sinking bomb in larger sizes, or even caddis. Use your imagination.